Hello and welcome back into Foolish Club Media. I am Steven Serda, joined by my guy Rocky Magaña. As night 2 of the NFL draft is underway, and little late start. We missed the start of round number 2, but it's okay. We still got some time until the Kansas City Chiefs pick, and there's been a ton of action so far in the second round. So we're gonna highlight that. Had some things going on. Been a busy couple of days for us here at Foolish Club Media, but we are here. We are ready to roll. We're gonna react to everything that's going on in round number 2 and see if maybe there's some action later on. The Chiefs trade away their third round pick, so they only have one selection tonight. And it would be kind of nice, Rocky, if they would get in on this trade extravaganza that is happening at the top of the second round right now, because we are flying through round number 2.
Yeah, it sucks that they don't have a pick number 95, because that kind of really handicaps what they want to do tonight as far as being able to navigate round 2. That was like one of the things with that last night's trade that was honestly like more so than who they selected. Like, I know as far as like the Rich Hill trade chart goes, it was a pretty close in compensation, but not having that pick 95 to use as a bargaining chip tonight when you're picking at the back end of round 2 and then only having one pick tonight, it really does handicap what you want to do. If the Chiefs want to make any kind of move in this range right here, we're looking at least one of their number 3s for next year, if not both of them, for them to move up into this range. And I don't know if Brett Veach and the Chiefs are comfortable with trading away 2 number 3s to move up in the second round.
Yeah, it's the more I was thinking about it as we're sitting here watching all of these trades go down and all of these teams be super aggressive because there's so much talent still on the board. Like Adonai Mitchell still floating around out there seems absolutely crazy. The way that he had been talked about all draft season, and his profile and athleticism and everything. But it does feel like it's going to be really tough for the Chiefs to try to move up, and I would expect them to maybe make some moves in the later rounds like we have seen them do, but moving up in the second round right now, especially after they traded away their third round pick to move up and take Xavier Worthy on night 1, seems like it's probably a long shot.
Yeah, I don't think they're moving up like in this round. If they do move up, we're talking like mid 50s. It's going to be another small move up like they did yesterday. We'll go through, we'll break down all these picks, but there's still tons of talent out there on the board right now. Even though some of the top end guys like Cooper DeJean and stuff have gone off the board at this point, there's still so many guys that because it's such a deep draft, that somebody had to fall. But you're just like, man, these teams are just getting steals at this position. So
Yeah, so let's run through the picks right now as the Panthers are making their second round selection, and that's after the Rams traded a lot to the Carolina Panthers, and the Panthers just selected running back Jonathan Brooks. They needed a running back. The Miles Sanders deal didn't really work out. They still got Chuba Hubbard, so I actually like that pick for the Panthers, and they acquired an extra second round pick from the Rams to move back, and now they've got another second round pick for next season. So I actually really love that move for the Carolina Panthers. I actually like what the Panthers have done so far in the NFL draft.
Yeah, they're making moves. They're being smart with their assets, and I mean they moved up in the first round to get my guy. And honestly, like we kind of didn't touch on it too much last night. Moving up from 33 to 32 to get Xavier Legette was huge, because if you believe in him as a wide receiver, then that 5th year control, considering just how inflated wide receiver contracts are becoming year by year, that it's like if you believe in a guy enough to take him in the first round, then get that 5th year control over him. But yeah, smart moves by Carolina so far.
So let's run through all of the second round picks, because as I mentioned, there's been a lot of action so far as we get going, and eagerly await the Kansas City Chiefs to make a move or just wait for their turn here at the back end of round number 2. I think the way we kicked things off tonight with the Buffalo Bills was actually pretty surprising, Rocky. They select Florida State wide receiver Keon Coleman, who is a pretty polarizing prospect, where if anybody who's checking us out, and again, we appreciate you joining us on our new project here, Foolish Club Media, Keon Coleman, I think, has a chance to be a really, really exciting NFL player. But there's also just massive red flags to his game that would make you question the Bills deciding to do that there, especially when there's reports that, the Bills have already traded back twice and they're considering, they're taking phone calls and listening to offers to move back again. And then they decide to go Keon Coleman. And obviously wide receiver was a big need for them, but they took one of the most polarizing prospects in the NFL draft, where you see his highlights, and his highlights are as good as any wide receiver that you're going to see. But I wonder whether or not he's going to succeed in a lot of the little things that you got to do in the NFL to find success. But they take a big swing on an insanely athletic player who can make some incredible catches with his size and his strength and his playmaking ability. But I still wonder what the Bills are doing right now, and I'm still questioning that move, because that's a prospect that might not be ready to go day one, and they need somebody who can step in and make plays for them after trading away Stephon Diggs and moving on from Gabe Davis.
Yeah, more than anything, I think it shows the reason why Buffalo was willing to trade with the Chiefs is that they didn't have their eyes on the same type of player at all. Like, they weren't looking for an Xavier Worthy. They were looking for a Keon Coleman. And Keon Coleman has something here's the thing. Keon Coleman's route running is raw to be nice. He's not a refined route runner at all, but he is athletic enough that he played basketball for Tom Izzo at Michigan State, right? That's why he's a contested catch guy. He's the guy can go up and get the ball. You don't he struggles with separation. He doesn't run great routes, but the guy's big, fast enough play speed, and he can out rebound people. It's that old adage that they used to say about Tony Gonzalez all the time, right? He has basketball skills, right? And that's exactly what he has. And it's something that I guess with Josh Allen, just get downfield and he's going to put it high and just go get it. It's a good pick for the spot. I didn't like Keon Coleman as a first rounder, but high second round is about where I had him. But yeah, I think more than anything, I think it shows that the Chiefs were trying to get ahead of the 49ers, if anything, because I don't think the Bills were taking Xavier Worthy.
Yeah, I still question that. And when we were talking about that last night, I just don't feel like, and the 49ers wind up taking Ricky Pearsall in the first round, which I think that is much more of a typical Kyle Shanahan wide receiver than Xavier Worthy is. It makes me think that, and we saw the Panthers be aggressive and go get Xavier Legette, but maybe they were looking at Xavier Worthy, or maybe there were some other teams calling Buffalo saying we want to go get Xavier Worthy. You should trade us the pick. And then the Chiefs said, okay, we got to go do this because we want that speed in our offense. And we talked about it a ton last night, and I sent out our reaction to the clip earlier today, and I feel like people weren't thrilled with how we reacted to the Chiefs taking Xavier Worthy, because at first I was kind of in shock, because I was like, I feel like they didn't need to make this trade. I felt like he could have been there at 32, but I don't know what they're hearing from other teams and the decision that went into deciding to pull the trigger on that and going and getting Xavier Worthy. But the more and more I think about it, the more and more I'm like, you know what? Why not? I spent all night long last night talking about how I wanted them to take a wide receiver, but I still really want to see the Chiefs try to go bully ball with their wide receiver room and draft these big, strong, explosive wide receivers. But it's just not what Andy Reid does, and he takes Xavier Worthy. And at this point, I think I've kind of changed my tune on it, and I am much more just like, you know what? If it allows the Chiefs to be the type of offense that can go drop 50 points on you again, then I'm in favor of it, because that's the most fun brand of Chiefs football that we can possibly get.
I woke up this morning and I was like, maybe I was a little too negative. I don't want to be known as a negative guy. Maybe I was a little too negative on it last night. And so I woke up and the first thing I thought to myself was, it was a dumb comment on my part, not because I believe in Xavier Worthy as a player, but because of who he's playing for. If he catches 15 passes next year, he could easily have 700 yards and 9 touchdowns, and I'm going to look like an idiot. And they could all be go balls. Literally, he could have 15. He could catch 15 go balls next year, have 9 touchdowns and 700 yards, and still be the limited player that I feared that he was. And then you hear Andy Reid talking about using him in special teams. And with the new kickoff rules, it's like, dang, there's only one line of defense. It's not like you have to break through 3 lines of guys anymore. There's one line of defense. like if he can get to the edge, like he could end up being like a kick return stud, like a total star in the return game, just because of that speed. Like 4.2 speed gets to the edge fast, and it seems like if you can block that edge, like there's going to be some big plays available there in the kick return game. And so because of that, and so then I said, okay, let me go back and let me watch a full game of all 22 of him. So I picked out his highest rated PFF game of the year, which was against TCU. And I looked at it and I took notes. And here's what I came up with. The speed is real. It's in-game speed. Like the 4.2 shows up on tape, no doubt. He has extreme lack of strength at the catch point. He relies 100% on separation. There's no contested catchability there whatsoever. He feasts on go routes when facing single man off coverage and roasts anybody who just tries to run with him. He can't get off the jam on the line of scrimmage. If he gets jammed on the line of scrimmage, he's done. When defense plays zone and just keeps him in front of them, he's rendered mildly ineffective. Like if you play a shell and you don't have, he's not a guy that's going to make you pay if you play shell defense. You're going to have to go with somebody like Rashee Rice or Travis Kelce. He is agile and can put his foot in the ground and cut, but he still has a very limited route tree and needs to improve upon it. He is a hard player, has good hustle. He did have a very, very bad drop pass in the game. He is a non-factor in blocking in the run game, and he worked predominantly from the slot in that game that I watched, where it was his biggest game of the season. And he didn't have a lot of success from the slot. He did have most of his success came from the perimeter and on like jet sweeps and that sort of thing. But they ran him from the slot a lot. I think just because they didn't want him to get jammed at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, and I mentioned that last night too, where it's that, and that's part of why like I wanted to see the Chiefs kind of lean into these bigger, more physical players, because we saw how effective Rashee Rice was last season, and his tackle breaking ability was tremendous as a rookie. And but he was also a limited player in terms of the routes that they were sending him out on and the things that they were trusting him to do as a player. And now he's got this likely suspension hanging over his head, but just depending on where they're at when the season starts and how that stuff plays out, Rashee Rice might be available at the start of the season, then get suspended midway through the year or something like that. We don't know how that's going to play out, but I think that I've come around more on Xavier Worthy, because that was my big thing last night. Was like, I just feel like if he gets pressed at the line of scrimmage, he is just going to be an ineffective player. Like it's about, can you get him downfield and get him in space? But then it's like when you talk about Hollywood Brown, when you talk about Rashee Rice, when you talk about Travis Kelce and Andy Reid and all the things he's going to try to do, it's like, yeah, but as a rookie, they don't really need him to do that much. Like I'm not convinced that Hollywood Brown is going to play a full regular season 17-game schedule or something like that. But it's more about what you were saying, Rocky, where it's like, can we just get him downfield a couple of times a game and just get him open downfield so we can get a couple of big plays a game from him, and he can have a McCole Hardman-esque rookie season or something like that? And then you mentioned the return game, which Andy Reid talked about after they selected him last night. And with these new kickoff rules, it has been a while since the Chiefs have had a kick return guy that really puts fear in anybody. And he could be that. Like that could be his biggest impact as a rookie, just the way that things are falling for the Kansas City Chiefs, because we saw what Tyreek Hill did there, and he eventually became just too good of a player to really return kicks for them. But that was really where he excelled, because he wasn't a huge part of the offense as a rookie, even though when he did get in the game, he was creating all these incredible explosive plays, because he's one of the best wide receivers in all of football. So it's like, if it's year one, it's just get him in the return game, see if that is something that we can get going again, because it's something the Chiefs haven't been particularly good at the last several years. Then that's obviously a positive. And then manufactured touches for him. You expect Rashee Rice to develop and take a step. Hopefully Hollywood Brown can stay healthy. And I think Hollywood Brown is a really underrated player who's going to be a really nice complement in the Chiefs offense. And then Travis Kelce, who is slowing down, but he's still Travis Kelce. And really the regular season for Travis Kelce now is more about managing him to make sure that he's healthy for the playoffs. And I think overall, all I care about right now is that I feel much better about this Chiefs offense than I did going into last season. where we were like, man, they got like 8 wide receivers and we kind of hope that all of them turn into something, but we don't actually really have any idea. And then the answer was that like, oh yeah, none of those guys are the answer except for Rashee Rice, who didn't really develop and become a huge part of the offense until like week 10 of the NFL season. So I think it's impossible not to feel better about the Chiefs wide receiver room today than it was headed into last season.
Yeah, 100%. This Chiefs wide receiver room is light years ahead of where it was this time last year. And one thing that I think that the Xavier Worthy pick, along with the Hollywood Brown signing, means that I don't think McCole Hardman's coming back. But then maybe the good news is Xavier Worthy is going to get all the jet sweeps. He's going to get every single touch that was going to be manufactured to Kadarius Toney last year. And then probably any shot that Kadarius Toney had of making the 53-man roster this year probably went out the window with Xavier Worthy. Now, the Chiefs have to pay Toney regardless, so he's going to get a shot in camp to prove himself. But, I mean, I don't see any way that Toney ends up on this roster with Xavier Worthy, like literally just leeching every single one of his touches, even from the return game all the way into the offense.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, you know, at this point, too, it's like I'm just overlooking Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore. Like they're not even on the team.
But they are.
And they still are. And of course, Andy Reid and Brett Veach this week, or I think, what did Brett Veach say? He was like, yeah, we still think he's like the most talented wide receiver that we have in the room. Like, Brett Veach is just saying that, obviously, at this point. But I'd expect
he's just lying to you. He's just lying to you on purpose.
I mean, it's like, because I remember there was a lot of conversation after last year, like, yo, are the Chiefs going to cut Toney and Moore? And it's like, well, there's just a 0% chance that they cut Sky Moore, in my opinion, unless like, you know, he just shows up totally out of shape at training camp or something and just like falls off of a cliff. Like it's very, very unlikely that Sky Moore would get cut. Darius Toney, I thought maybe there was a little bit higher chance of that happening, but it still doesn't really make sense at this point. Like they can keep him on the roster this year, see if he can play a complementary role in some capacity. Otherwise, he's just not going to play like he did at the tail end of last season, because that's, you know, he wasn't healthy at the tail end of last season, but I also think some of that was just like the Chiefs don't really like to say that they benched players or just make it apparent that they bench players. So I think some of that was just the Chiefs were just like, yeah, we don't trust you when you're out on the football field. You burned us too many times this year. So we're not playing this game anymore. We're trying to go win Super Bowls.
It was LaShawn McCoy 2.0 is exactly what it was.
Yeah.
And I mean, the whole thing is that the only way that Kadarius Toney doesn't make the team, because they are paying him regardless, is if they don't have a roster spot that they feel like they can dedicate to him. Like if they have enough wide receivers on the team that they feel like giving them a better chance to win than Kadarius Toney, then he's not going to be on the roster because he's not making enough to be prohibitive to cut him. Like you're paying him the same amount whether he's on the team or off the team. So it purely is based upon performance at this point for Toney.
We are absolutely flying through round 2 of the NFL draft. And we started talking about the Chiefs roster, which I think this works better because I feel like last night we were getting sidetracked by reacting to first round draft picks and talking about everything. And then I kept being like, oh yeah, we've been talking about this for 20 minutes. We're supposed to be talking about Chiefs stuff here at Foolish Club Media. Again, I appreciate everybody who is joining us right now. Please follow us on Twitter at Club Foolish. Please go subscribe to our YouTube page, Foolish Club Media, as we get this thing off the ground and try to get some things in place to really make some amazing Chiefs content for you guys. We really appreciate all the support that we have been shown so far, and we're trying to get through draft weekend, and then we're going to really try to ramp things up and start looking towards training camp and really building on this thing this off season. So we're all very excited about it. We all really appreciate all the support that you guys have gotten. So please just give us a like, give us a follow, subscribe us, review us on Apple and Spotify. We appreciate all of that so much. But let's get into some more of these second round picks, because we talked about Keon Coleman a little bit, and the Chargers move up to go get Georgia wide receiver Ladd McConkey, which, Rocky, I don't remember how you feel about Ladd McConkey specifically, but I do really like this move for the Chargers, because we talked about it last night when they decided to go offensive line in the first round. And we talked about Harbaugh and everything that he's doing with that team, where it's like, he's really running into I want to pound the rock in the run game and play defense like he did in San Francisco, even though he's got Justin Herbert as his quarterback. And I feel like we still haven't even seen a totally unlocked Justin Herbert in the NFL because he's just been in bad situations his entire career. But this is a good move where we talked about that wide receiver room last night, where their wide receiver room right now looks like it's one of the worst in the NFL. And so adding Ladd McConkey feels like a nice, like, safety valve type of player that should step in, play right away, and probably give you more production than Quentin Johnston did last season.
Oh, 100%. And I didn't like Ladd McConkey in the first round. I had a third round grade on him, but like he was always going to get drafted higher than what I thought he was going to, where he could go. I think this is a good pick in a sense from a player personnel standpoint for the Chargers. It does give Justin Herbert a reliable target, definite injury concerns, definite size concerns. I just still don't believe that the type of football that they're going to want to play is going to be successful in 2024 in the NFL. Like they got two pretty good players. Like we got one excellent player in Joe Alt, and then they got a pretty good player in Ladd McConkey. And I think like what is the one thing the Chargers have always done? Had a lot of talent and done nothing with it. I feel like you're in a division where Patrick Mahomes is going to score on more drives than you score on, almost guaranteed every single time. And you want to play ball control offense that limits the number of times that you have an ability to score the football. All you're doing is almost ensuring that you're going to lose the numbers game. You need as many shots at scoring on Patrick Mahomes as possible. Like that's what you see. Like teams that come out, like the closest that teams get to being the Chiefs is because they come out swinging and they keep swinging. These teams that try to play ball control like offense, like, yeah, it's usually a close game, but more times than not, the Chiefs come out on top because they find a way for Patrick Mahomes to have the ball last and he scores on the drive. I feel like they're just setting themselves up for like a lifetime of failure with trying to play this type of football in this day and age, in this division where you're playing against Patrick Mahomes twice a year, and it's a division ruled by the Chiefs.
I mean, I think it works if you step into a situation where you have a bunch of Hall of Fame players on defense, like he did when he went to San Francisco. But that is not the case. That is not what he is stepping into with the Los Angeles Chargers. So we'll see. I mean, I do like their draft picks. I also feel like the Chargers are just at least a couple years away from really looking like a legitimate contender. And Justin Herbert's such a talented player. If they can just keep him healthy too, because that's been a big issue. Like last couple of years, he's just had a lot of like nagging injuries that have slowed him down, in part because their offensive line has sucked for multiple seasons. So I think they're still a ways away, but I don't hate the draft picks, but I am totally with you that I still have my questions about how successful Harbaugh is going to be trying to build it that way at this point in the NFL with the Los Angeles Chargers. Next pick, and this was Rocky. This is I'm probably going to do just as bad of a job pronouncing it as the guy that announced it at the podium at the NFL draft. It's Rook Ohoroho, defensive tackle out of Clemson. This was one, the Falcons, super aggressive, super weird draft moves. Second night in a row. This was a defensive tackle that everybody was like, we had that guy in like the 4th round or 5th round. Like, what are you doing at the top of the 2nd round being hyper aggressive when there's some of these other players still on the board? I don't really know. Like, I thought that Terry Fontenot was a respected general manager that was supposed to be like this really smart player personnel guy. And like, they're building something in Atlanta now with Kirk Cousins. And like, every decision that they have made is screaming like Mike Mayock with the Las Vegas Raiders. I don't know what is happening right now in Atlanta.
They're literally drafting players like they're a kitten on meth right now. like they just like see something. They're just like, like Rook or Hororo has awesome athletic profile. He has a ton of juice, maybe one of the most athletic, probably the most athletic interior defensive lineman in this draft. He is all athlete and very raw. He is the rawest prospect. Almost, you can almost say he might be the rawest prospect that's going to go in the top 200 in this draft. He is all athletic profile. And the fact that you took him but when Jerzon Newton was still on the board, I mean, I'm sure the Washington Commanders ran their pick up to the stage when they saw that the Atlanta Falcons traded up. They probably thought, oh man, Atlanta Falcons are going for Johnny Newton. And they went with Rook instead. And I mean, Washington Commanders had to be celebrating. It had to just be like popping bottles when they realized that they were going to get Johnny Newton at 36. It's just like, I mean, because Johnny Newton transitioned into what the Commanders are doing. Commanders are having a hell of a draft. Oh my gosh. They got their guy in Jaden Daniels. They just drafted Johnny Newton, who without his foot injury is a top 10 talent. Like he is a top 10 talent. He was the best interior defensive lineman for the first half of the entire nation for the first half of the season. And then they also just recently were on the clock and they made another pick, which we'll get down to later, which was another excellent pick. And they're on the clock again. I'm excited to see what they're going to do now. The Washington Commanders, what's their new GM's name? Something Peters, Jay Peters, I think is his name. It's Jay Peters. He's kind of a handsome fella. If I'm going to be real,
Adam Peters.
Adam Peters, yeah, old Adam Peters is killing the game right now. He's having a heck of a draft, and so for all the crap that he caught for his top golf dates that he set up, he's killing it in the draft right now. So it's only weird if it doesn't work, Serda.
And okay, there's our guy off the board, Rocky, as a Colts select wide receiver, Adonai Mitchell at pick number 52. Let's talk about let's talk about Adonai Mitchell really quick before we get to some of the other interesting things that we've seen here in round number 2. Really surprised that he lasted this long. Really surprised that Keon Coleman was taking over him, just with the buzz that was around AD Mitchell coming into this NFL draft class. But I do like what the Colts have offensively. Like, I thought Josh Downs had a decent rookie production season. Michael Pittman, Jonathan Taylor, and then Anthony Richardson coming back from injury. Like, Anthony Richardson's one of those players that I feel like a lot of people have kind of forgotten about outside of like the fantasy community and NFL community. And I feel like Anthony Richardson's got a chance to come out next season and be that dude that everybody is like, whoa, where the hell did this guy come from? Because he's got all of the athleticism in the world. Like, he's as big as Cam Newton, but runs a faster 40, and he's got an absolute cannon for an arm. And so now they add speed and Adonai Mitchell. Because they have, I'm blanking on his name. What's his face? Alec Pierce, who they just drafted a couple of years ago.
Love
has
him.
Been an awful NFL player so far. Was one of the absolute worst rated wide receivers in all of football last season. So Adonai Mitchell stepping in for Alec Pierce is an absolute upgrade for Anthony Richardson. And the Colts are very quietly like a really frisky team that everybody's in on the Texans, and I totally am too. I think the Texans have a chance to really be competitive and be a legitimate AFC contender. But like, I really like what the Colts are doing quietly in the background, and I'm still not sold on Jacksonville. So like, I think the Colts are set up to be a lot better than people think they are after I've kind of bought into them the last couple of years and they've let me down. But Anthony Richardson going down after 3 games last year certainly didn't help.
I mean, Anthony Richardson for those first 3 games was the man. Like, he was awesome those first 3 games of his career as a rookie. Like, considering like what was expected of him versus what he put on tape, he was awesome. I almost thought to a point from the Colts that they saw the first 3 games out of him and they were like, okay, like, we've seen enough out of him right now. Let's shut him down for the year, give him a redshirt season while he's injured, and let him continue to develop, and then we'll go full force next season. To Adonai Mitchell, to the point about Adonai Mitchell sliding so far, he's a first-round talent. Like, he's a top 25 first-round talent without a doubt. I liked him better than Xavier Worthy. I liked him better than Keon Coleman. I liked him better than a lot of guys. The problem is that he has a very, very acute case of George Pickens-itis. And there's a lot of teams that don't want guys who are infected with George Pickens-itis on their football team. And that's the whether it's justified or not, he caught the MO of a guy who possibly has an attitude problem and who takes plays off. And there's a lot of serious football teams out there that don't want that on their roster.
Yeah, you don't want another Kadarius Toney on your team.
You don't want another Kadarius Toney.
You still got one. No, and I think too with the Colts, what's so interesting about them, and I feel like some of this was lost on them last season too, because they were a fringe playoff team last year with Gardner Minshew, and that's mostly credit to Shane Steichen and his first year there, and I don't think he got enough credit for what he was doing with Anthony Richardson in that small sample size. Was like, oh, this is going to be fun and this is going to be really entertaining. Then he goes down and they have to really change their offense for Gardner Minshew because he's a totally different player who just simply isn't capable of doing the things that Anthony Richardson does. But they did it and they were still productive. And the Colts still had some really big, offensive games with Gardner Minshew as their quarterback because Shane Steichen, I think, is a really underrated play caller. And the Colts the Texans, deservedly so, are getting all the hype, and CJ Stroud was absolutely incredible. And, them winning a playoff game and doing what they did in his rookie season was absolutely incredible. And I'm totally in on that Texans team being a legitimate AFC contender, but the Colts are quietly really, really interesting. And I think they deserve to get more attention. So I love AD Mitchell going to Indianapolis. I think that's a really fun pick. Let's get into some of the other things from earlier in the second round that we haven't had a chance to talk about. Jalen Polk going to the New England Patriots. I love what the Patriots have done. The Patriots landing Drake May at number 3 after the Commanders decided to go with Jaden Daniels, and then adding Jalen Polk. I really like Jalen Polk, and everybody loves Rome Odunze, and I feel like Jalen Polk didn't get enough love at times this draft season as we were getting close to the draft. Jalen Polk was really, really good last year, and Jalen Polk has a really, really interesting NFL profile, and so pairing him, we talk about the Chargers and how bad their wide receiver core is. The Patriots had the worst wide receiver room in the NFL last season, and still on paper this year have it. So I think Jalen Polk is amazing for Drake May. I think that's an incredible couple of picks for the Patriots to start with as they're trying to rebuild things after the Bill Belichick era and try to totally retool this entire roster.
This is a home run pick by New England. Jalen Polk saved Michael Penix on numerous occasions last year. Like Michael Penix Jr. is a first round draft pick because of Rome Odunze and Jalen Polk. His catch radius is ridiculous. And he's one of those guys where you look at his athletic profile, you look at his testing numbers, and you say, okay, he's like, if he was in Madden, I told this to Kramer on our episode of each season the other day. If he was on Madden, he'd be like an 85 at everything. Or another comparison is on Mario Kart. Mario is good at everything, but he doesn't have the top speed of Bowser. He doesn't have the acceleration of Toad. He doesn't have the control of Princess Peach or whatever, right? Or Koopa Troopa. But he's really good at every single thing. He doesn't have any weaknesses. And that's Jalen Polk. Jalen Polk is just that solid, number 2 wide receiver, going to give you 750 to 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns every single year for 10 years. He's going to be a quarterback's best friend. He's not going to make stupid mistakes. He's not going to be he's going to be a plus in the locker room. He's just he's the guy you want to have on your team. I would have been okay with the Chiefs taking him at 32, to be honest. I just think that he's such a high floor player with enough top end juice that he warrants this pick 1,000 times over.
It's also just amazing that as soon as they move on from Bill Belichick, I think there's a case to be made before we even see either of these dudes take a snap for the New England Patriots. These are the 2 best draft picks that they have had in the last 7 years because their drafts have been that atrocious. And Bill Belichick is that bad as a talent evaluator.
I tell you what, Jalen Polk sure as hell is not N'Keal Harry.
Yeah.
I guarantee that.
It's unbelievable how bad their draft classes were during the last few years of the Bill Belichick era. But yeah, I love what the Patriots have done with their first 2 picks. The Tennessee Titans, this was another trade up. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rocky, right? There was this, I think this was the run where we had several trades in a row. So the Tennessee Titans move up and they take defensive tackle out of Texas, Tavondre Sweat. And obviously, he's a player that has, I think, gotten mixed reviews from analysts and guys who break down film and stuff. And then obviously, he just very recently had some legal troubles ahead of the NFL draft. So it's kind of a surprise to not only see him go this high in the second round, but to see the Titans trade up to go get him this early in the second round.
Yeah, no, it's the issue is that it's so surprising that I probably didn't have him going this high before his off-field incident, right? Like that's the whole thing. Like before he got the DUI, I didn't have him going number 38. That just means that talent evaluators had him as a first round draft pick. Like if he hadn't gotten a DUI, he probably would have gone in the first round. Um, but yeah, it's an insane spot for him to go in the draft, and obviously, um, there's a lot of talk around this about just like don't be an idiot. Like I said it the other day, just don't be a dumbass. Like get a ride share. It's so easy to get a ride share in this day and age, especially when you're on the verge of making millions of dollars. And we can tell now that since he got drafted this high in the second round, that mistake, I guarantee, it cost him a fifth year on a team. It cost him. It cost him what? What's that? 8 digits. It cost him an 8-digit salary because of that stupid mistake. And so on the field, though, I mean, he's the best defensive, like nose guard, like nose tackle in this draft, probably that we've seen in a couple of years. He's got such juice. Like size is always going to be an issue. He's going to have to keep his weight down, but nobody moves like he does at that size.
And we were talking about the AFC South and all of the interesting teams in that division, and I didn't mention the Titans because I'm still struggling to contextualize like how I feel about the Titans, because when you looked at that team last season, you were like, yeah, that's a team that's just not willing to admit that they're done, and that the window of the current makeup of that roster has probably passed with Ryan Tannehill and that team that actually managed to get to an AFC Championship game a few years back. Like they haven't been close to that since. They weren't going to get close to that again, and so they reset. They fire Mike Vrabel. They bring in Brian Callahan, but then during NFL free agency, they're like, we're going all in on Will Levis, baby. After his rookie season where he had like one monster game, and then I think that one game against the Miami Dolphins where he brought them back late in the fourth quarter, like that there was 2 highlight performances from Will Levis as a rookie. The rest of it was really bad. And some of that is their roster was bad last season, but they went all in. They obviously still have DeAndre Hopkins. They go give Calvin Ridley a boatload of money. They still have Treylon Burks, see if they can get anything out of him in year number 3. And Chig Okonkwo was a player that I really liked going into year number 2 last year. And then he was just a huge letdown. Like, and then they still have some pieces on that defensive side of the ball. So maybe Tavondre Sweat is going to step in with Jeffrey Simmons and the Maulers that they have up front. But really, at the end of the day, it kind of feels like the Titans are this team that's still refusing to admit that they're done and that they're not going to be good enough to actually win anything, like the Saints have been doing for the last decade. Just paying way too much money, destroying their cap, moving draft picks around, and doing all that stuff. It feels like the Titans are the new Saints at this point.
Oh, 100%. And it's like, was Mike Vrabel really the issue in Tennessee? I don't think so. He's a guy who's been maximizing talent and giving no matter how bad his teams are, they always gave the Chiefs a run for their money. Like, I don't know if there's another team that coaches better on a consistent basis than like a coach than Mike Vrabel against Andy Reid. Like how many times have the Chiefs had to come back from behind or had like a one score game against one of Mike Vrabel's teams? That being said, yeah, like Will Levis has awesome guns. Like he's jacked, but did he really show you enough for you to say like this is our guy moving forward? Like he had 2 games, like you said, and then he was horrible.
No. Yeah.
He was horrible. I was in a dynasty league where like my quarterback situation was like legit the worst quarterback situation you've ever seen, because it was a 32 team like dynasty dynasty fantasy league. And who was the guy who was the quarterback for the Texans before CJ Stroud? I can't remember his name.
Davis Mills.
Yeah, that was my starting quarterback.
Ugh.
That was my starting quarterback.
Was it, or who was it? Was it Davis
It
Mills?
was Davis Mills. Well, Davis Mills was my starting quarterback on my dynasty fantasy team.
But there might have been somebody else in between there. But Davis Mills definitely had a year there where he was the starter for a majority of the season.
Because it wasn't a snake draft, and I picked number 32 and then number 64, and I just I didn't take a quarterback in the first round, and I should have, and then I ended up with Davis Mills. And so But yes, that being said, like this feels like Davis Mills all over again kind of thing where he had like a 2-game stretch and then he was horrible, which is also probably why I signed Will Levis to my fantasy dynasty team part of
That
the way
that
through
that
last
first
year.
that first performance when nobody had tape
Yeah.
on him and nobody knew what to expect, and I think he threw 3 or 4 touchdowns or something like that, and then and even that game that I'm thinking of against the Miami Dolphins, where I think it was like that they scored 2 touchdowns in the last like 3 minutes or something of the game to beat the Dolphins, when it seemed like the Dolphins totally had the game in hand, but it was like the Titans offense was terrible until the last like 3 minutes of the game, where they just had a couple of big plays that wound up going their way and they wound up winning. Like, I just don't think there was enough from Will Levis in his rookie season to feel like you can to feel like you should be pushing all your chips in on next year with a new head coach and hoping that it's going to work out. So still no idea what the Tennessee Titans are doing, but I am interested in what the Los Angeles Rams did with pick number 39. Now, the Rams preparing for life after Aaron Donald. Obviously, you lose one of the greatest NFL players of an entire generation, one of the greatest NFL players of all time, and they make a big move to move up to pick number 39. They trade with the Carolina Panthers to go get Braden Fiskey from Florida State, who is a guy that I know the AP team likes quite a bit. But what they had to give up to go get him was just a lot. They gave up their second round pick this year, a 5th round pick, and then their 2025 second round pick to go up and get him. Now, that's not that's typical for the Rams, who like that's the team and general manager who does not care about draft picks and has made that clear over and over and over again. But at some point, overpaying constantly to make these kinds of moves is going to burn you. But they get a player that they were willing to give up that much for. So they better hope he's a star, because he's going to be taking over for Aaron Donald.
I love this pick. I think the compensation was worth it. I think he's a first round talent. I've been on the record saying I'd take him at 32 if the Chiefs were looking defensive tackle, and he was the best on the board. I think he's a first round talent. If you watch the ACC championship game, he had 3 sacks in that game when they didn't have a quarterback and the lights were the brightest and they needed somebody to step up. He came in and just destroyed the Louisville Cardinals, right? Like he just destroyed their offensive line, ruined their day. Their quarterback couldn't do absolutely anything. And like he was so fired up. I mean, you just watch the passion he was playing with, and then he killed it at the combine. Like this guy is legit. This is just a dude who is a football player. Like you want to talk about guys that used to watch a guy and you're like, dude, this guy plays football. This guy is stout. He's strong. He's fast off the snap. He has plays with power. His motor is insane. I think that he's obviously, you're not going to say he's the next Aaron Donald because nobody is, but you pair him side by side with his college running mate and Jared Verse, that's a lot of strength and that's a lot of nasty on the same defensive line. Like the Rams, they gave up a lot, but they're building something there on that defensive line because they also got the conductor last year, in the draft. What's his face out of Wake Forest?
I can't.
The rookie defensive tackle.
Yeah, he was really underrated last season and didn't get. I didn't feel like getting enough pub, but part of that was probably because Puka Nacua was just like had one of the greatest rookie seasons we have ever seen.
You weren't listening to Beach Season then, Serda, because we talked about him a lot.
Kobe Turner, who
we love Kobe Turner.
Year for the Rams. I think he was another late round pick. I think by then, right?
Yeah, we had a 3rd round grade on him in Beach Season last year. We liked him a lot just because he. The only reason why he didn't play at a better program was because Wake Forest, I think is where he played, was the only college that's going to let him be a musician and study music while he played football. And so.
That's interesting. I never would have known that. I like that is going to be in my mind now. I'm always going to think about that, Rocky.
That's why he's called the conductor. It's not because he's like a train. It's because he's an actual conductor of symphonies.
That's an amazing little tidbit, and that's why you should follow Rocky and all of his draft content, because he's got some incredible stuff at arrowheadpride.com. But yeah, I really like I do for all of the less need F them picks. We don't care about draft picks with the Rams or whatever. Like they've done a really good job drafting the last couple of years. Like they had really limited draft capital, but they have hit on a lot of these picks and managed to fill out that roster to the point where, you know, that this is a team that can mess around a little bit and be really interesting in the NFC West next season. Obviously, it's a tough division, but if Matthew Stafford stays healthy and plays like he did last year, like Matthew Stafford was playing some of the best football of his career last year when he was healthy. So the Rams are still really interesting moving forward and what they're trying to build there. There was a lot of noise around them trying to go get another wide receiver. They may still try to do that. You know, based on if they can get Cooper Kupp healthy and back to maybe not playing like peak Cooper Kupp, but being healthy enough to stay on the field along with Puka Nacua, like their offense could be really fun again this upcoming season. After the Rams did that, the Eagles also traded up to take, and this one was kind of devastating. We talked about him a ton last night, Rocky, and this was really where I wanted to see the Chiefs go because I think he's just one of the more versatile players in the NFL draft. They take Iowa cornerback Cooper DeJean, and this is after the Eagles took Quinyon Mitchell in the first round. So this is Howie Roseman just totally overcorrecting because the Eagles secondary was one of the worst in the NFL last season after they decided to run it back with James Bradbury and Darius Slay, and it totally fell apart for them. This is really fun for Philadelphia. Like it is an overcorrection, but man, if you're going to rebuild a secondary, you do it like that. And you do it with Cooper DeJean too, on top of Quinyon Mitchell, who a lot of people loved in the first round. Like I think you got 2 first-round caliber players to reset your secondary, and I think it's really, really strong by the Philadelphia Eagles.
I mean, yeah, we know that Howie Roseman, he's not afraid to double dip or draft talent where he already has talent. I mean, he's the best player available kind of guy through and through. And I'd be shocked if they don't play DeJean at safety. They're going to play DeJean at safety and Mitchell at cornerback, I almost guarantee, and have them both on the field at the same time. And it's their secondary just turned into one of the best secondaries in the NFL just with these 2 moves. They went from being a total liability to a strength. And I know that they're still like their secondary was really, really bad. But you have 2 guys who are this good in your secondary, and it is a strength, even though like you need more than 2 defensive backs. Like these guys just cover up so many sins.
And getting 2 guys of that caliber in one draft class and having them locked in after they way over invested in the cornerback market, because it's been an issue in Philadelphia for so many years where they gave up a haul of draft picks to go get Darius Slay, gave him a ton of money, paid James Bradbury too much. And then there was like the reports that they were going to move on from him, and they restructure and wind up keeping him. And it winds up being a huge mistake last season. Like this is why the Eagles will continue. Like it feels like they have these windows as a team where they got a couple of years where they're like a Super Bowl caliber team, and then they got to reset because Howie's so aggressive. And so they always find a way to be back in the mix and to be one of these teams that is contending in the NFC. So yeah, I love the moves for the Eagles, and it immediately resets their secondary in a way that they desperately needed. After they take Cooper DeJean at number 40, the New Orleans Saints also traded up to take Alabama cornerback Kool-Aid McKinstry. And I know this is another guy you've talked about a lot. And I think it's an important move for the Saints too. I was making fun of them earlier, and I still don't think the Saints are going to be good. Like they're committed to Derek Carr long-term for whatever reason. And Derek Carr was absolutely awful last season. And as long as they're handcuffed to him, I don't think the Saints are going to be anything that is going to resemble a legitimate contender in any way. Like they could still be one of those teams that's annoying to play and kind of a tough out in the regular season, but they're not going to win anything with Derek Carr. But this is a nice move, especially with Marshawn Lattimore has been an incredible player for them for a long time, but there's been some buzz about them moving on from him and maybe trying to reset a little bit, even though they continue to just not do that. So I think this is a fine pick by the Saints, and we see them be pretty aggressive in the draft almost every year.
Oh yeah, we definitely see him. And here's the thing with Kool-Aid McKinstry. At one point in the season, he was the consensus top cornerback in the draft, and then it became Terrion Arnold, then it became Quinyon Mitchell. But like Kool-Aid McKinstry may not have the athletic profile that you want, but from actual just from a football talent perspective, he's the best cornerback in the draft. The man's technique is flawless. He's fearless. He locks guys down. He's not afraid. He can play zone, obviously, as a Nick Saban cornerback, but he's also not afraid to jam at the line of scrimmage, and he's strong enough to do it. Like you see, he's great in run. Oh my god, he's great in run support. He's a smart player. He can blitz the quarterback. Like, you want to talk about a guy who has a lot of L'Jarius Sneed in him. Kool-Aid McKinstry has a lot of L'Jarius Sneed in him as a player. And L'Jarius Sneed was a top end athlete coming out of college. His athletic profile was actually better than most people remember. But after that knee injury, he lost a step. Let's just be honest. Like, he wasn't as athletic as he was his rookie year. But that being said, like, he didn't have to be the best athlete on the field because he was the smartest athlete on the field. And I really feel like that's Kool-Aid McKinstry.
And this was the Saints make this move in the middle of a little cornerback run here in the second round. With the following pick, the Houston Texans take Georgia cornerback Kamari Lassiter. And I think this is a good move by the Texans. You can tell me I'm not particularly familiar with Kamari Lassiter, but I know for a fact that the Texans really needed another cornerback because I think that they got a lot out of that secondary last season with inferior players. And part of that is just D'Amico Ryans is such an incredible defensive minded head coach. And he gets so much out of his scheme and so much out of just putting players in the right positions. But I think their secondary overall totally performed above expectation and really above their overall talent level outside of like Derek Singletary.
Oh, 100%. And here's the thing with Kamari Lassiter. Think about your Georgia defensive backs over the last 10 years. That's Kamari Lassiter. He's this pretty smart guy, not the best athlete, plays sound football, tackles well, has good fundamentals. Is it going to translate to the NFL? Georgia defensive backs have struggled as of late in the NFL because of those athletic limitations. But as a prospect, you like him enough at this position that he's a good selection, I think.
Yeah, and it's Derek Stingley. I knew I got that name wrong as soon as I said it. See, this is what happens when you take 3 weeks off, Rocky.
Stingley Jr.
You forget star NFL players' names, and I think Derek Stingley is a very nice quarterback for the Texans.
Oh man. Speaking that was probably one of my biggest misses. I thought I said he was going to be a bust. I didn't like Stingley at all coming out of college, and woo. And hold on, I got to eat that L real quick.
And Stingley struggled as a rookie. So I think that again highlights just what D'Amico Ryans was getting out of that side of the ball for the Houston Texans and everything that they've invested this offseason in trying to be a legitimate contender. Like, that Texans defense next season is going to be a problem with everything that they added to that defensive line. And then you talk about adding Stephon Diggs to that wide receiver core and everything they did on offense. Like, that while I think we're kind of underrating what the Colts could possibly be next season, there's a reason that everybody believes the Texans are going to be a legitimate contender because D'Amico Ryans is an incredible head coach, and they're going to get a lot out of that roster because they got way more out of it last season than they should have.
Oh, 100%. I think, the Texans are going to be a problem as long as they continue to give CJ Stroud weapons on offense, because they're going to be able to scheme up a defense. Their defense is going to be good regardless, right? Just because of who their coaches are. As long as they keep on giving CJ Stroud weapons, they're going to be a contender.
And next up, after the Houston Texans take Kamari Lassiter, number 42 overall, the Arizona Cardinals take Rutgers cornerback Max Melton. So we had a nice little cornerback run there in the middle of the second round. And that was where all the action was happening. And all these teams were trading up and moving up. Like, we got to go get our DBs now.
Oh, 100%. And who's a big fan of Max Melton is our film guys over there, Ron, Caleb, and Nate. I think all three of them are actually really, really high on Max Melton. I like him too. He's not the most athletic guy. He's never played. He hasn't really ever been asked to play man coverage, so he doesn't really have anything on tape with that, but he's got a good enough athletic profile, and he's got a good head on his shoulders. Like, you hear him talk, he's just you hear guys talk in their interviews, at the Senior Bowl, and you're like, oh wow, that guy really loves playing football. That guy is a dude who just eats, sleeps, breathes football. And that's kind of what you hear when you talk to Max Melton.
And the Cardinals aren't an interesting team, as in, like, I think the Cardinals are going to be a good football team, but I think that they're interesting in there was a lot of discussion around head coach Jonathan Gannon going into last season, and like some awkward social media clips, and like and the way that he really got hated on for his defense with the Philadelphia Eagles. And if you watched Arizona Cardinals games last season, I think you could make the case that they performed above expectation. Like I thought Jonathan Gannon actually got a lot out of that roster, considering how bad the talent was. And now they add Marvin Harrison Jr. They beef up their secondary. Like, might not be a totally bad spot for them, even if you don't have a ton of faith in Jonathan Gannon. Like, we saw the way that the Eagles coaching staff fell apart when they lost Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon. Like, I feel like we should have put a little bit more weight into what those guys were bringing to the table before last season. So seems like we feel good about that move by the Arizona Cardinals. And pick 44 was the Las Vegas Raiders. They take Oregon center Jackson Powers Johnson. This was a player that I saw a lot of people talking about. Like, a lot of people really liked him as, when you take a center, it's always kind of like, where do you take him? And it always feels like if you can get a center in the second round, like that's a safe spot to where like it's not a premium position, but that doesn't mean that guys don't have like first round talent. It's just that centers don't typically get drafted in the first round.
Yeah, I mean, Jackson Powers Johnson is that guy who is kind of little like I'm not saying like he's this good, but he's kind of a mix between Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith. Like he has that nasty streak of Trey Smith, but he's got just that solid base and just skill of Creed Humphrey, where he's not going to make a ton of mistakes and he's going to be a reliable guy. And he's a great guy in the locker room. He could play tackle or guard. Like, I think Jackson Powers Johnson is the best interior lineman in this draft. Now he slid in some people's boards in the last couple of weeks, but I mean, damn it, Steven. I think that the draft cycle is so long that people just shake their boards up because they get sleepy, they get bored. They've been watching one guy. I watched one guy 2 months ago, and then all of a sudden it's that meme of like the new girl walking the other direction. They turn their head, like they see a guy they haven't watched yet on film, and suddenly he's the flavor of the month and he's rising up their draft board, right? But if we're being honest, Jackson Powers Johnson is the best interior offensive lineman in this draft. And at that point, I mean, you can people have like different theories on this. Like some teams won't draft interior offensive linemen in the first round. I think that's dumb. I think that if it's a need on your team and he's the best player you have on your board, then you take him. And I think he was a late first round talent.
I don't love that it feels like the Raiders are having a good draft. Like, I don't want to admit that because they get Brock Bowers in the first round, and they shore up their center position with a player that seems like that's going to be your starter for the next several years. And I still don't really have a lot of faith in what the Raiders are doing and how competitive they're going to be with Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. But we'll see what Antonio Pierce can get out of that roster, because they did perform above expectation a little bit, even though I still don't think that they're I wouldn't expect them to be a particularly competitive team moving forward here for here in the next couple of years, especially in a division with the Kansas City Chiefs. We're not too far off from the Chiefs draft pick right now. So
yeah. And I just want to loop back around to Xavier Worthy for 1 second, because I just saw this on social media that did you see this? That the night that on November 20th, when MVS dropped that huge touchdown pass, he sent a heart hands emoji. He DM'd a heart hands emoji to the Kansas City Chiefs. and then 2 days ago, he DM'd them 2 more days. Like he wanted to be a Chief, like through and through. And so I do like that. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
That. So let's run through some of these other picks, see if we can catch up a little bit to make sure that we are on top of things when the Kansas City Chiefs select it at pick number 64. So we just talked about Jackson Powers Johnson. The Green Bay Packers pick number 45. They take Edgerrin Cooper, linebacker out of Texas A&M. That's followed up by the Carolina Panthers taking Jonathan Brooks, running back out of Texas. And correct me if I'm wrong, Rocky, that's the first running back off the board, right, in this draft?
Yep.
Obviously, this isn't a running back class that has gotten a ton of hype, but I think there's some nice players, and I still think running back is a position that can be in play for the Chiefs later on. I don't think they're going to do that here in the second round. But Jonathan Brooks is a really interesting player who's coming off of a serious knee injury, but he's got all of the tools to make you think that he could be a lead back, and he goes to a place in Carolina that, if they could, they would probably offload that Miles Sanders contract. And then, Chuba Hubbard has shown some nice play in the NFL, but he's more of a rotational back than he is a guy that you're going to give, 15 touches a game to.
Oh, 100%. He is more of a rotational back. He's not your Bijan Robinson, who's a feature back. He was a guy who was considered the consensus best back in college football when he went down with his knee injury. I had him around like running back 4 on my board, just because I felt like as the season went on, there were some guys who really emerged who were just straight up awesome, like Jalen Wright from Tennessee. Like that guy just has another gear that no other running back in this draft has. But I would say that he's the safest, like injuries aside, like skill wise, he's the safest running back pick in this draft.
I've really been talking myself into Notre Dame running back Audric Estime. Like I just love the size, and like for a dude that's that big, like he shouldn't be able to move the way that he does. And so I've been talking myself into him, especially like in my dynasty mock drafts and things like that, while I'm trying to get ready for things. Like I'm taking Audric Estime like absolutely everywhere.
He just doesn't like putting his shoulder down though. That's the problem.
Yeah.
He wants to be a finesse running back, but he's built like Natron Means.
Yeah. I'm gonna need you to run some people over with that kind of size, dude. Like
100%.
that's why I'm interested in you as a player and interested to see where you land in the NFL draft. But so after the Carolina Panthers take Jonathan Brooks, the New York Giants take Tyler Nubin, safety out of Minnesota. After that, the Jacksonville Jaguars take LSU defensive tackle Mason Smith, and the Cincinnati Bengals take Michigan defensive tackle Chris Jenkins. Washington Commanders, who just had a boatload of second-round picks, they take Michigan cornerback Mike Sinistrel. Is that how you say it, Rocky? I think
Sanistrel.
Sanistrel. You said you really liked this pick by the Commanders as well, right?
Undersized player, but he's like prototypical pound for pound best football player you're ever going to get, right? Like he's undersized, but the dude is just aggressive and he's all over the field and he's a smart football player and he shouldn't be as good as he is at his size.
So yeah, Commanders having a very nice draft class, especially if they get a lot out of Jaden Daniels, their rookie quarterback. They've had a bunch of draft picks, and they had another pick just coming up here in a few minutes. After that, the Pittsburgh Steelers took center Zach Frazier out of West Virginia. We already talked about Adonai Mitchell going to the Indianapolis Colts, and then it was the Commanders once again taking Kansas State tight end Ben Sinnott. I haven't done a ton of work on this tight end class, but everything that I've kind of read about it is like it's not the greatest tight end class in the world, but there's some guys that you might like that could wind up having some upside once they get developed a little bit.
Yeah, he's a good tight end too on any roster. He can catch a little bit, run a little bit, block a little bit. Nothing to write home about. I mean, he's not a guy who's going to go. This isn't last year's tight end class, right? There's no Sam Laportas in this tight end class aside from Brock Bowers.
After that, it's the Cleveland Browns. They take Ohio State defensive tackle Michael Hall Jr. I think that's an interesting pick for the Cleveland Browns because, like, I still feel like the Browns are another one of those limbo teams right now where obviously last season they have just a dominating defense, but Deshaun Watson is a shell of himself as a quarterback at this point, and the Browns are on the hook for all of that money, and they can't really do anything about it unless they want to pull the Denver Broncos and just cut him and eat all of that money for several years, which seems pretty unlikely because Jimmy Haslam is simultaneously one of the cheapest owners in the NFL and also just one of the absolute worst owners in the NFL. So the Browns are another one of those teams where like they still have tons of talent on the defensive side of the ball, but we know it's hard year over year to consistently be like a great defense. So I question whether or not they can continue to do what they did last season. And I also just have no faith in what they have going on the offensive side of the ball with Deshaun Watson.
No, I don't have any faith in the Browns, period. I mean, anybody who gives Deshaun Watson that, like it's still the same regime, right? Like there's obviously a decision-making process deficiency in that organization. And they haven't earned the benefit of the doubt, and so I'm not going to give them the benefit of the doubt.
After that, the Miami Dolphins take Houston offensive tackle Patrick Paul. Dolphins obviously need some offensive line help. That was one of their biggest weaknesses last year. And Dolphins, another one of those teams that I don't think we're talking about enough. I feel like everyone should be expecting the Dolphins to take a big step back, because last season, they get to the playoffs, but everybody knew by the postseason, that they don't have it. Like they're not a contending team. They're not a team that you have to fear. And then the Chiefs just absolutely dominated them in the postseason. Then this offseason, they were in cap hell. And so they had to cut a bunch of guys to try to free up money and try to get situated. So they need a lot of pieces going into this draft. After that, pick number 56, Western Michigan edge goes to the Dallas Cowboys, Marshawn Kneeland. Tampa Bay Buccaneers at pick 57 take Alabama edge Chris Braswell. Then the Green Bay Packers take Javon Bullard, Georgia safety. Pick number 59, the Houston Texans, Blake Fisher, offensive tackle out of Notre Dame. Rocky, is there any of these guys that you want to touch on before we keep pushing ahead to make sure we catch up to the Kansas City Chiefs pick at 64?
No. Push on, because the Chiefs are up in 2 picks. One pick. The 49ers are on the clock.
Okay, so pick number 60, Buffalo Bills take Utah safety Cole Bishop. Pick number 61, Detroit Lions take Missouri cornerback Ennis Rakestraw Jr. And the Baltimore Ravens pick is in. See, we're flying through the second round tonight. I love this. I love flying through rounds 2 and 3 on day 2 of the NFL draft, and then rounds 4 through 7 are even faster. Yep. I love the sped up clock on the second days of the draft.
100%. And the Baltimore Ravens took Washington offensive tackle Roger Rosengarten. The other guy.
I feel like that's a typical Ravens pick.
Yeah, he's 20 years old.
Yeah,
he should have. He honestly should have stayed for another year, and he decided he wanted to come out, and God bless him. But this guy has tons of upside. He's a strong young kid.
One thing the Ravens are
and develop.
Yeah, like one thing the Ravens are particularly exceptional about is like identifying players in the trenches. They're never going to have a bad defensive line. They're never going to have like a god awful offensive line. They always find value at those positions in the NFL draft, where it seems like, even we talk about like edge players and how difficult it is to find premium edge rush talent outside of like the top 15 picks in the NFL draft. And the Ravens just do it regularly. Like the Ravens are constantly like, yeah, we'll just find somebody in the 4th round and make it work. And it's very frustrating for a lot of NFL teams. So that's a typical Ravens pick. San Francisco 49ers on the clock, pick number 63. So Kansas City Chiefs coming up here in just a minute.
The pick is in for San Francisco.
Woo!
Pick is in for San Francisco. Chiefs are on the clock. Chiefs are on the clock.
Okay, Rocky, best available player. Who do you want to see the Chiefs take right now?
Oh my gosh, there's so many guys available. I wouldn't mind if we're gonna go double dip at wide receiver. How about Troy Franklin out of Oregon? Would be a guy. Kingsley Suamatia is still there, the BYU tackle that people thought might go to the Chiefs at the end of round 1. The cornerbacks have kind of been picked dry a little bit, so I would hold off on them maybe till later in the draft. There's still a Roman Wilson, who I think Andy Reid would absolutely love, out of Michigan. He would feast in Andy Reid's offense. He's a dude who loves football. He used to fly. He grew up in Hawaii. He would fly standby to another island every day to go to high school so he could play football. Like his dad worked for the airline. Oh, Chiefs just traded. What did we do? We traded back?
Yeah, it says pick. It said trade, and then it said pick is in. I don't know who did they trade, or did they submit a pick, or did the 49ers trade? I don't know what's going on.
Kansas City traded up to 60. Kansas City traded up to 63 with the 49ers. So we gave them 173 and 64 for 63 and 211. We are just like, don't care about our middle of the round.
They're going to get their guys this year. I don't hate it. I don't hate it at all.
I don't either. I don't either. Is this Troy Franklin? Is this Kingsley Suamatia? I think it might be Kingsley Suamatia, knowing that they need it. And they took Kingsley Suamatia, number 63, BYU left tackle, total prospect. In 2 years, this guy could be Penei Sewell, though. That's the upside on this guy. He is so raw.
That's really interesting. And we talked about this last night because we we saw that the offensive tackle group just didn't fall the way the Chiefs obviously wanted it to. And there's all the rumors about the Kansas City Chiefs trying to trade up. And I saw our friend Ron Kopp Jr. actually talking about this earlier on Twitter, saying like Kingsley would be like dream come true pick at 64 at this point, because now one that means hopefully the Chiefs can get a left tackle that they can and develop, whether it be Wanya Morris or Kingsley here, and try to draft and develop. And you also have a young player who is cost controlled and under control, so you don't have to go out and sign another player like Donovan Smith again, like we've seen them do the last couple of years. So I think getting Xavier Worthy in the first round and then getting an offensive tackle and doing it with two players that you feel pretty good about for the Kansas City Chiefs at that late in the first round, at that late in the second round, and they had to move up to do it, whatever. They are addressing their needs and they are doing it in a productive way. And I think Chiefs fans should feel really good about this right now.
Oh, 100%. Ron Kopp is in our chat over here just losing his mind because he was a fan of Kingsley back in August, like back when the season was first starting. We were talking like early on, like building out our boards and everything. He was like, guys, you got to check out Kingsley Suamataia for BYU. He's my dark horse first round draft pick for the Chiefs this next year. Like all the way back in August, Ron Kopp was on this dude. And this guy's up. I think he actually is Penei Sewell's cousin, if I'm correct. This guy, he's young. He's so young. He's not even 21 yet, I don't think, or barely 21. He moves so well. He's long. He anchors well. Like there's like literally, his problem is that he doesn't latch on to guys because his hand placement is horrible and his footwork needs work, because it's not that he can't move his feet. It's that it sometimes gets out over his skis or over pursues or over lunges. He just needs to like get into camp, get with Andy Heck, and just be developed. Like that's what we talked about yesterday, how in college football they just don't develop guys anymore. BYU definitely doesn't develop guys. They just like kind of throw their athletes out there. And this guy just needs to be developed because his upside is through the roof.
Yeah, I think everybody should be absolutely thrilled about that, because, I don't know if the move up, and I'm sure Andy Reid's going to make a joke about him playing at BYU when Andy Reid speaks to the media about this draft pick. But we knew going into this draft, Rocky, like top needs for the Kansas City Chiefs, another edge player possibly, but offensive tackle, I think, was probably number one on most people's boards, and then wide receiver being another big need. And so now, even if you have concerns about Xavier Worthy, like I think that the Chiefs have enough depth there now in the wide receiver room, and Xavier Worthy provides enough upside. You should feel really good about it, even though they had to trade up to get him. Like the trade up didn't cost them that much. And so now another small trade up with the San Francisco 49ers, which maybe San Francisco saying, hey, we're going to take him unless you give us an extra pick or something, because San Francisco needs some offensive line help too. That was the biggest weakness on that team last season. Or maybe there was another team looking to jump the Chiefs again. And maybe that's how the Chiefs have to do business right now to get teams to actually trade with them. Like they're just like, okay, we're just going to have to take your word for it. This team's trying to get in front of us. So let's do it. Let's just go ahead and pull the trigger on this thing so we can get the guy that we want. But I think Chiefs fans should feel tremendous about this, because adding this kind of tackle depth, like this late into the second round, and a player with that kind of significant upside and possibly the opportunity to shore up your offensive line with, you still got the core of the interior for at least this season. We'll see what happens next season, but you got Jawan Taylor. Now you add one of these guys into the mix and have a competition for the left tackle position. That's going to be something that's really interesting to watch in training camp this year.
Oh, 100%. And they might still go out and sign a veteran tackle. Like they're not going to go out and maybe sign a Donovan Smith, but they may have to go out and sign some veteran tackle help, because let Wanya Morris and Kingsley Suamataia battle it out. But are they either one going to be ready for week one? Maybe not. Like you may just redshirt Kingsley his entire rookie season and still go out and sign a tackle. The Chiefs have no tackles on their team. They have space to still go out and sign another tackle and carry him on the roster, and without it like carrying an extra tackle. Like they have the guy from the International Pathways program who I can't pronounce his name, can't remember his name off the top of my head right now. They have Wanya, they have Jawan Taylor, and they have Kingsley Suamatia. They have 4 tackles right now. You need at least 5, right? So they still have room to go out and sign one more tackle and carry the international pathways player on their roster, which I'm not sure. Are they getting an exemption for him? Like, I would have to look into it more.
I think that's the deal, because it's not Zamet, right? He wasn't actually the guy that they designated as their international pathways player. So
no, he was a free agent.
Yeah, so I think they do get an exemption for designating him that way. And so now with that trade, so that was 171 and 211, right? So that was a 4th round pick and the Chiefs' 6th round pick. So now,
I think the trade was the Chiefs gave up 173 and 64 for 63 and 211.
Okay, that makes more sense. So they still don't have a 3rd round pick, and they're moving picks. But I think too, I was thinking about this last night when we were having the discussion about Xavier Worthy and like how we felt about it and our reaction to the Chiefs having to trade up to go get him. Like, after I slept on it and after I calmed down about the whole situation, and I'm not going to act like I was like upset about it. I just wasn't totally confident in the pick at the time. But after I slept on it, I was like, you know what, Rocky, what Brett Veach has done over the last few years with drafting, like, for them to be this aggressive and say, we're going to get the guys that we absolutely want, and the way that they have drafted over the last few years, I'm not doubting them anymore, because they find a way to get contributors every single year in the draft. And they find a way to get guys who are going to come in and make plays and have roles on the team when they are asked and called upon to go in and produce. So at this point, I'm fully confident that, like, hey, if they're being this aggressive, it's because they are that sure that they can turn these guys into playmakers for them. So I feel really good about the Chiefs' 2 draft picks so far.
I mean, like, I'm coming around on Worthy just because he's a Chief and I'm a Chiefs fan, and I can't stay. Like, once he's on the team, I have to like him by default until he Kadarius Tonys it up or MVS's it up, and I'll still like him. I'll just be frustrated when he screws up. But until then, Xavier Worthy's a Chief now. I'm a huge fan of Xavier Worthy. I wasn't a very big fan of Hollywood Brown before we signed him, and now I think Hollywood Brown's going to go for 1,500 yards and 10 touchdowns this year because rose-colored glasses, sure, call it that, but he's one of us now. Like when somebody's not a part of your family, you can look at him and be like, who's F this guy? I don't know. What is this guy? But once he's your guy, you're like, hey, nobody effing talks about my guy that way.
Because I saw people talking about, now that I'm thinking about it, I saw people talking about Kingsley as like a guy that, and maybe the Chiefs just take him at 32, even though it feels like a huge reach. And so getting him at 63, I feel like you got to be thrilled about that. Like our guy Ron Kopp is right now. And he's doing his victory dance because he called his shot on it and absolutely nailed it. And so him being available and the Chiefs addressing their biggest need in this way, their 2 biggest needs with their first 2 picks, it almost never falls like that. Like the draft board never falls like that, where you're like, oh, they got the exact things that I know that they need to shore up on this Super Bowl championship roster. And yeah, at this point, I just have so much faith in them. It's impossible for me to doubt anything that they're doing.
No, I mean, they've earned, what, they're going for their 3rd straight Super Bowl title. At what point do you earn the benefit of the doubt? Yeah, I didn't like Worthy as a prospect, but if somebody's earned the benefit of the doubt, it's these guys. And even though, like, maybe their wide receiver track record hasn't been as good as some other teams, doesn't matter. They've won 2 straight Super Bowls, and they're going for a 3rd one. They get the benefit of the doubt on every single pick until the pick doesn't work out. And yeah, maybe it was a little bit of a reach for Kingsley at 32, but not really, because the upside is that much. Like, yes, should the Chiefs have taken Kingsley at 32? No, because at 32 they needed an immediate contributor, and they weren't in a position to take an offensive lineman at 32 who wasn't going to come in and be ready day one, which I still don't think he will be. But the upside, this guy's upside is so great, and I trust Andy Heck and Andy Reid to get him there. And I also trust that he's just so young, that he's just so early in his development that he's just not there yet. But you can see he's not a guy where, like, on tape you look at it and say, oh, this guy just doesn't have it. No, it's like this guy just isn't there yet. Like this
Yeah.
is a yet type of guy. And I have no doubt like this guy has all pro potential, like not Pro Bowl potential. This guy has all pro potential. Will he ever realize it? Who knows? Talent gets you drafted. Hard work keeps you in the NFL. That was what I stole that line from. Was it Damian Parsons from the Draft Network? Me and him were tweeting back and forth one day about CeeDee Lamb and why he's gotten so much better. And he was like, "Bro, hard work gets you in the NFL. Talent gets you in the NFL. Hard work keeps you there." And I was like, "You're 100% correct. I'm stealing that." And I just stole it, but I credited the person, so it's not really stealing. That's block quotes on the articles on Arrowhead Pride. You see something in block quotes, it means that we're quoting somebody else. I put my block quotes around that for him.
So,
Yeah.
and you mentioned that, and I think we talked about it last night, is Andy Heck and Andy Reid and this coaching staff. Like, we spend so much time talking about obviously the stars and the Super Bowls and everything, but I don't think they get enough credit for what they've done along the offensive line and the way that they have drafted and developed guys there, because they're not a team that is getting these premium tackle positions that are going in the top 12 picks or something like that. And we talk about how hard it is just to find these guys that can actually compete at the NFL level at that size and be athletic enough to move around and try to block edge rushers that are insane freaks like Myles Garrett and Nick Bosa and those kinds of guys. And the Chiefs have been one of the better teams at finding these guys and then developing them into contributors. And I think in an ideal world, Kingsley winds up being your starting left tackle moving forward, and you have that locked up. And in an ideal world, like, he winds up being your starting left tackle for like a decade. And I think this could be an incredible pick by them. And then in a perfect world, I think Kingsley is your starting tackle moving forward. And then Wanye can be your swing tackle. And we've seen how they can develop guys that way who can come in and give them strong reps and play well when they need to get called upon. Or maybe Wanye, maybe Jawan Taylor. I know they gave him a lot of money. Maybe Jawan Taylor takes a step back next season and struggles even more than he did this past year or something. And Wanye winds up moving to the right side. Like, just what this does for them along the offensive line and what they can do now and how they can kind of play around with things and see how these guys develop is going to be something that's really interesting to watch, on top of watching Xavier Worthy just absolutely roast people in training camp in July.
Oh, it's going to be amazing to watch. And yeah, what the Chiefs have is young. Even with Jawan Taylor, he's a young enough player. They have young players that are locked up for under multiple year contracts, so they continue to develop together. Yes, the interior of the offensive line is all going to be up next year, and they're going to have to replenish those. But the edges of the offensive line are now set for the foreseeable future, and that's the hardest place to find protection. And you talk about it. I know I said that Kingsley wouldn't be ready week one, but if you want to talk about, okay, well, what do we envision if Kingsley Suamataia is the week one starter at left tackle? What does that look like? What do the Chiefs need to do? Well, the Chiefs need speed, because they're going to need wide receivers to get open fast so that Patrick Mahomes doesn't hold on to the ball for too long. Check. They're going to need a good blocking tight end, maybe to help out on that side in Noah Gray. Check. It's sometimes, or they can go out and get one. Theo Johnson in this draft later would be great.
I feel like they got Irv Smith. I know he's not much of a blocker, but I feel like they just always kind of figure that out. Like,
they figure that out.
Like, just give me a body, I'll make him work.
Well, they're going to need a good blocking running back too. They're going to have to bring in a running back and block, and they re-signed Clyde, and Clyde does everything good. Like, Clyde's not elite at anything, but Clyde can block.
I actually totally forgot that they brought Clyde back. And when that happened, I was like, I actually really like this. I know people are down on that. Clyde is a great locker room guy. He's a great teammate. Everybody absolutely loves him. Nobody ever says anything negative about Clyde. And like, when you see like the energy that he brings to the team, like, that's something that the Chiefs covet. And that's why they brought him back, because they love having Clyde around. And it was the same thing with Jerick McKinnon.
100%. And Clyde's going to get you 4 yards of carry, and he's not going to put the ball on the ground. He's not going to kill you. He's not going to hurt you. He's going to make a couple plays here and there. Like, Clyde's the type of guy that hangs around in the NFL for a really long time, because coaches love him, because they love having him on the team. They love having him around. They love that he's not going to hurt him on the football field. He's just going to go out there and do his job. And so I could see the Chiefs bringing in another blocking running back, like a running back who excels in pass blocking. But honestly, Isaiah Pacheco is an underrated pass blocker. And coming out of college, I did his breakdown for the site, and he had one bad rep against Leo Chenal, where Leo Chenal threw him like a rag doll, like literally into the quarterback, like picked him up and threw him into the quarterback. That was kind of funny. But after that, like you saw multiple reps where Isaiah Pacheco took on an edge rusher one-on-one and held his own. So I think the Chiefs have the blockers now that I mention it. Like they just have to give help to that side, but I think that they're set up for it. And I think that they have the receivers and the pass catchers for it to be successful. And, if they have to go with Kingsley Suamataia week 1, then let's start getting the kid developed and let's put his feet to the fire a little bit. And you only learn by doing, right? And so let's get him in real game action. I'm sitting here talking myself into King. I said yesterday, I said, regardless if they take him, they're gonna have to sign a vet tackle because he can't start right away. And I'm sitting here talking myself into him starting week 1.
Well, and they might still do that. Like we saw them add Donovan Smith really late in the offseason last year, and the Chiefs do have a little bit of money to play with after the L'Jarius Sneed trade. So I don't think that's off the table. Like there's still going to be some guys floating around and veterans who want to take their time signing to teams and making decisions and committing to going to training camps and off-season OTAs and mini camps and all of that stuff. So I still think they could totally do that, but in an ideal world, the Chiefs just got 2 contributors with their first 2 picks in this year's NFL draft. So I really like what they have done so far. And the Chiefs don't have a 3rd round pick as of right now. So Rocky, I think we're going to wrap this thing up and take some time away, try to reflect, maybe watch some Kingsley Suamataia film and decide how we feel about this whole thing and really let our feelings digest. And then tomorrow we'll be back right here on Foolish Club Media. So please make sure you follow us on Twitter at Club Foolish. Make sure you follow us on YouTube at Foolish Club Media. Please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review. I'll have the podcast up shortly after we're done with the stream. So please make sure you go check that out on Apple and Spotify and do everything you can to help us support this new project that we're going on, because we're going to keep cranking out Chiefs content all summer to try to grow this thing back up and try to be one of the places that you have to go to consume Chiefs stuff here. But Rocky, any final thoughts on the 1st and 2nd round picks of the Kansas City Chiefs before we get out of here?
My Lord, Steve Serda, this has been a fun way to launch this endeavor. And yeah, our goal is to be the destination for your Chiefs content. And guys, we just thank you so much for the support, man. This has been the most fun I've ever had doing a Chiefs podcast in my entire life. Just being here and building it from the ground up with you, Steve. Man, this is awesome.
Yeah, we're very excited. So we appreciate all the support that you guys have shown us over the last 24 hours. It's been an absolutely insane week, and the initial response to our feed launch has been amazing. So please continue to support us. We need all the help we can get as we get off of the ground. But I do know that the rest of the evening, I'm going to be very excited about the Kansas City Chiefs' first 2 draft picks. Now, if the Chiefs do something crazy and try to trade up back into the 3rd round, I will try to organize something, or I'll get something for you on the podcast feed. So all the more reason you need to go subscribe to us at Foolish Club Media on Apple or Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review everything that we are doing there. But other than that, we're going to put a bow on this thing, and we're going to wrap up night 2 of the NFL draft, barring the Chiefs making some other kind of major move. But thank you guys so much for hanging out with us tonight. You guys have been absolutely phenomenal, and we are thrilled for the Kansas City Chiefs' first 2 draft picks. It's very rare that the team that you root for addresses both of their top needs with their first 2 picks in the NFL draft. So that is something for everybody to be very excited about. So we're going to get out of here. Go enjoy your Friday night, and we will be back tomorrow for day 3 of the NFL draft.